Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University and part 2 of our new mini-series on fossil Pokemon, focusing sort of specifically on the new fossil Pokemon introduced in Generation 8. Originally, this part was supposed to be about all of the new fossil Pokemon in Generation 8 and how unnatural Frankenstein monster-like they are. But I decided to change that because I really wanted to talk about Dracovish. Dracovish has been blowing up the Pokemon side of the internet by just how incredibly powerful it is. All 4 of the new fossil Pokemon have one of 2 new signature moves. If it's got the yellow bird-like top half, it's got the move Bolt Beak, which is an electric type move, and if it has the fish-like upper half, then it knows the move Vicious Rend, which is a water type move. Both moves do the exact same thing. They're both base 85 power, but they double in power if the user moves before the target. That by itself makes both of these moves so powerful. They make it stronger than some Z moves with a base power of 170. However, Vicious Rend also has another perk in that it's classified as a biting move, and Dracovish has access to the Strong Jaw ability. That means that Dracovish can pretty reliably fire off moves with a base power of, and I want to make sure I get this right because it just blows my mind, 382 when you consider the same type attack bonus, because Dracovish is also a water type. But the only way for Dracovish to actually use a move that powerful is if it moves before the target, and with a base speed of 75, it's not the fastest Pokemon around, but it's also not slow. And so with the right team support, Dracovish can one-hit KO almost any Pokemon that doesn't resist water. And I actually ran some calcs on it. Any Pokemon that is less bulky than max HP, max defense Mew will get one-hit KO'd, as long as it doesn't resist water. And that's not even to mention that in single battles, Dracovish is pretty commonly run on rain teams, boosting Vicious Rend by another 50%, making its base power 573. Once people realized how unnaturally powerful Dracovish is, the jokes and memes about it being literally unnatural started to flow. So that's why I decided to move Dracovish's video up in the lineup for the mini-series. But what is Dracovish supposed to be? Let's break Dracovish down into its 2 parts, its top and its bottom. The top half is very clearly based on the extinct fish from about 360 million years ago in the Devonian period called Dunkleosteus. This genus of ancient fish belongs to the class Placodermi, which are thought to be some of the first jawed vertebrates and have no living descendants today. Placoderms were famous for having these extraordinarily armored heads, with plates of bone making up roughly the first third of their body. Many of them even had armored eyeballs. Fossils, because Dunkleosteus fossils have never been found in the United Kingdom, and from what I could find, the closest ones are in Belgium, which is really not all that close. Of course, there are other species of placoderms, but none are more well known than Dunkleosteus, and Dunkleosteus is pretty much regarded as one of the first jawed, super predators, the first really big predator to really ever appear on Earth. Overall, I think this works well for a couple of reasons. Firstly, that Dracovish is quite bulky. Its highest stat is its defense at base 100, and the fact that it's only a skull from Dunkleosteus incorporated in Dracovish's design also makes sense. We almost never find any fossils that aren't part of the really heavily armored skull. That's because their skeletons were likely made out of the same material as sharks, which is cartilage, which is, the same stuff in your ear and in your nose. So it's very flexible and doesn't preserve nearly as well as bone does. I've been waiting years for Game Freak to make a Dunkleosteus-based fossil Pokemon, but never in my wildest dreams did I think that this is how they would do it. Okay, so with the top half done, let's take a look at the bottom half. And some people have taken to drawing fan art of what all 4 of the fossil parts would look like if they were whole. And for the most part, most people seem to depict the fossilized Drake, sort of the bottom half of Dracovish, as being sort of similar to a Stegosaurus, with it being quadrupedal, bulky, and slow. However, I don't really think that's the case. For one, there are no thagomizers on its tail, or neck, I guess? Man, Dracovish really is weird. Anyway, thagomizer is the word for the long spikes at the end of a stegosaur's tail. And it's funny, that was never really a scientific term, it's just something that people started calling it, and then the scientific community just sort of adopted it. Regardless, neither Dracovish nor Dracozolt have them, so I don't really think that the bottom half of either of these, you know, weird Frankenstein monsters is actually sort of based off of a stegosaurus. Also, while stegosaurs did have 3 toes on their back feet, the arrangement and also the length sort of implies to me that the bottom half is more based off of a theropod-like dragon thing, much more closely looking, at least, to something like a T-Rex or a Velociraptor. And I would say it's probably rather closely related to things like Tyrunt and Tyrantrum, which could be where they get the dragon type from. Okay, so it's the skull of a placoderm-like fish sort of slapped on the tail of a theropod-like dinosaur thing. But why didn't they just put the fish head on the actual front like they did with Dracozolt? Like I mentioned in part 1 of this series, back in the old days of paleontology, sometimes mix-ups like this happened. Sometimes they did end up putting skulls on the wrong places, or not even just skulls, bones on skeletons that they didn't even belong on. It wasn't unheard of for the skull of a sauropod dinosaur to be mounted at the end of the tail instead of at the end of the neck where it should be, and I think that this sort of orientation is a reference to those mishaps. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on this unholy monster that is Dracovish? Let me know down in the comment section below. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science. If you feel like this content is worthy of it, we do have a Patreon. The link will be down in the description. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.